Thank you. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dawit Bekele, and I'm the director of the African Regional Bureau of the Internet Society, and I'm chairing this session this afternoon. I hope that you enjoyed the great lunch, and not too much, I hope, so that you can follow this session. We have I think 5 speakers today, this afternoon. The session will be on internet policy challenges and the way forward. It's a very nice follow-up on what we have heard this morning. I think this morning we have heard that the internet is a critical infrastructure for the region. This is very different from what I used to hear maybe a few years back, where internet was considered in many regions outside Europe and America and maybe Asia, where internet was considered as a luxury. But this is no more the case. We depend on it, whether we are in the Middle East or in Africa or Asia. We work on the internet. We communicate with our friends and family, and we really believe that we cannot live without the internet. And that is why it is a very important tool that we have to nurture and to protect. And for this, policy is very important. That's why we are going to concentrate on policy this afternoon. Whenever there is policy, there are divergent considerations, models that come, and we are going to have distinguished speakers who are going to tell us what are the different views with regards to internet policy. There are divergent views on what the internet should be for the generations to come, how it should be governed, and we are going to try to discuss issues concerning whether it should be regulated or rather self-regulated, whether we should have multi-stakeholder governance or whether we should have intergovernmental governance, whether we should have harmonization of regulations and policies or rather having localized policies. So these are the issues that we are going to discuss, and I would like to invite the speakers one by one. The first speaker is Theresa Swinehart, who is Executive Director of Global Internet Policy at Verizon. She will talk about the internet model and the state of the internet governance debate. I will introduce the other speakers as they come. Thank you.
Okay, is this working okay? It's fantastic. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. This is an exceptional event at an exceptional time, and from the speaking and initiatives this morning, I've learned much more about what's happening, and there's obviously a lot going on. So we've been given 2 questions. What are the different policy trends and models, regulation, best practices, intergovernmental, existing and competing today, which I'll try to touch on briefly, and then towards a harmonization or fragmentation of the policy landscape. So I'd like to take a step back just briefly when we talk about the different policy trends and models that are occurring today. I think it's important that we take a look at originally how the architecture of the internet evolved. And it's a decentralized system consisting of servers and routers and fiber and enabling communications across different networks and across different devices. And over time, that, of course, in of itself created a decentralized system of institutions that had responsibilities for different parts of developing technical standards or best practices and various initiatives of that sort. And so what we've seen over the years is really an evolution of collaboration, coordination, and cooperation, and recently also very much influenced by end users, whether they have concern over data protection or security, various other initiatives. And so this collaboration, coordination, and cooperation, I think, is how we're going to see things continue. With the economic and social importance of the internet, we've also seen a greater attention to the question of how is it governed? And this brings us to the internet governance dialogue, or rather, what are the policy trends and models? I think many will recall that the World Summit on Information Society actually has a working definition of internet governance, namely the development and application of governments, the private sector, and civil society in their respective roles of shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape the evolution and the use of the internet. That's paragraph 3, if anybody wants to quote that. But from that, I think we highlight the fact that there's numerous institutions involved in things, and it's very important at the national, at the regional, and at the international level that we watch how those continue to evolve. So if we look at the topics and themes that are coming up in the policy areas, we're starting to see collaboration across different organizations. We have topics that range from data protection to transborder data flow, cybersecurity, intellectual property rights, content access, broadband for health or education. And we have a range of institutions that are addressing issues, whether at the regional level, such as the Council of Europe and the Cybercrime Convention, or the OECD, which came out with Internet Policy Principles. We also have technical standards developments across a range of organizations that within of themselves are cooperating with each other. And we have initiatives such as, for example, the introduction of internationalized domain names, which I think is an important area to highlight, this being one of the regions where 11 of the 22 Arab countries have IDN CCTLDs. Now, this initiative didn't happen overnight. It happened through a collaboration of policy practices, technical standards development in a range of organizations ranging from the IETF to ICANN to the UNESCO and partnerships with them as well. So as we see the dialogues in these regions continue, we see a great importance on the relevance to end users. We heard this morning about, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, the Tagrahet initiative. There's also the Arab Web Days. So initiatives such as these help develop local content, local initiatives. And there was the Arab IGF recently, which again has dialogues bringing together all stakeholders and enhancing the collaboration and cooperation among different best practices, ideas, initiatives. So if we look at the need towards a harmonization or whether we're going towards a fragmentation of the policy landscape, I think we're very much at a turning point right now. We've had last month the Global Internet Governance Forum that was held in Azerbaijan, brought together a wide range of participants discussing a range of issues relating from trust in cyberspace to rights, security, and privacy. We also have coming up now some important meetings that will be happening in relation to international telecom regulations, and this week the WTSA meeting in Dubai. And I think in these contexts we need to keep an eye on unintended consequences. So the issues being addressed are important, but how they're being handled and how they're being discussed, we need to make sure that we're not creating a situation that's going to harm the continued collaboration, cooperation, and coordination that has evolved to date. That we don't end up with proposals that potentially put at risk of regulating such things as IP interconnection or creating a toll booth for the internet traffic per se, but rather that we find ways of addressing issues and concerns, bringing together all stakeholders so that we have a harmonization of policies and dialogues as opposed to the risk of fragmenting the environment that we have today. Because otherwise we risk having harmful changes that can impact everybody, including for this region, 50% of the population, which I understand is under 25 years of age. So they will certainly be coming up with new innovative ideas. So if we look at some overarching points for public policy to encourage investment and deployment, while also balancing really the needs of the marketplace and the consumers, I'd suggest that we take a look at a dispersed cooperative governance model of today and how that's going to continue to evolve. That we have a test for regulatory intervention, that unless there's a demonstrable harm to the consumer or to competition, that we seriously consider how to address an issue in a way that protects consumers, addresses bad actors, but doesn't undermine innovation and collaboration, and that we take into consideration that as the Internet's ecosystem continues to evolve, so does transborder data flow, engagement across borders, and how do we address issues that are of national concern, regional concern, and international concern. So just in conclusion to answering these questions, we have a system right now that's been evolving over time, and the Internet's become increasingly important to all of us on a day-to-day basis. There's a recent study that was done, A Giant Step Backwards or the Way Forward, an analysis of some of the proposals that we're seeing to date in some of the dialogues, which really highlighted that we need to recognize the progress multi-stakeholder processes, market mechanisms, and voluntary agreements and open access to information has created for everybody around the world, and that history and common sense show that this may be the correct way for moving forward on policy frameworks and promoting things in order for the next generation to succeed. So there's much work to do ahead, but there's also much risk if we get this wrong and we lead towards a fragmented society. It's not just a risk for business or for governments, but importantly, it's a risk for the next generation of users who are coming online and can benefit from everything that we've had to benefit from today. So I'll leave it at that, and we can have a dialogue with everybody later. Thanks.
Thank you, Theresa, especially for telling us what are the evolutions of the Internet governance model. It's not something that we have reached overnight, but that has developed throughout the years, and also about the risks and the threats of modifying significantly this model. And I think this is something that would be of interest to the future generation who is listening today. The next speaker is Dr. Imad Hoballah, who is Chairman and CEO of the Telecommunication Regulatory Authority of Lebanon, and he's going to talk about digital content challenges and actions required by governments to foster its development. Dr. Hoballah.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to take it from here if nobody objects, because standing over there, I don't think people are going to be able to hear me being away from the mic. It's going to be an issue, and I apologize. So, and I have to be different. I look around and around the panel at least, and the speakers today, I am a very rare breed here today, one of the people who are representing somehow a branch of a government. So thanks for the ISOC having me here, and for ICT Qatar. It's good to be back in Doha. You know, discussions of the Internet content and regulations, and Internet regulations in general, have gained momentum and have recently come to the forefront of the debate as an issue for the governments, the ICT societies, individuals, civil societies, Internet users, and everybody. Really everybody is debating the issue one way or another, whether we're discussing security, safety, development, growth, etc. For Internet users, the net is a very powerful growth and development universe that should not be stifled by regulations. But that's exactly the power of the regulation, the power of the Internet is precisely the reason governments want to regulate it. Throughout the World Conference on International Telecom, WICET 12, as they call it, preparatory process, a plan which is planned to start next week, and it's supposed to be lasting for 2 weeks. Many governments have raised major concerns about spam, piracy, confidentiality, children online protection, society safety, security, network security, national security, intellectual property, connectivity cost, and above all, concern about what they call sovereignty. But you know, these are the same issues that we all grapple with as internet users. They are not only government concerns. Everybody has these issues. Governments advocate. What do the government advocate? They advocate that a binding treaty, intergovernmental treaty, is the best mechanism to solve the issues, the complex issues evolving around internet. And they think, some of them think it's the ITU that should be doing it. They argue that sovereignty is the main concern for these governments. There are questions, though, of censorship that, in my opinion at least, are behind whatever they're advocating. Control. On the other hand, the internet advocates and the internet users, internet societies advocate a claim, and they claim that the internet is a self-evolving universe. It must be growing globally. It must be kept free of choking, and you must avoid censorship and jeopardizing net neutrality at all costs. Do not strangle it, as we say. Local policy environment, market conditions, and the development context could be important factors in any policy process. Hence, solutions need to be somehow, they also need to work locally. Advocates of this opinion invite governments to work through multi-stakeholder process to develop flexible policies that guarantee hands off the internet and freedom of speech and expression, and leads to growth, entrepreneurship, creativity, development, advancement, and most of all, higher standard of living. That's what's supposed to be done. To those advocates, multi-stakeholders include policymakers, the internet community, industries, civil societies, and internet users, who all need to work together to allow the internet to develop as a free and open space through the efforts to develop a common vision. The debate continues as to what is best for the internet. Actually, the question should be what is best for the people, for the society as a whole. Having a binding global and harmonized policy treaty for internet regulation, or having fragmented government-driven sovereign country, and I could go on with the terms that every country will do whatever it wants, or having an evolving multi-stakeholder approach that takes into consideration whatever has been done so far. It takes into consideration the interests of the different stakeholders, not only the government. Let's admit, between parentheses, the governments are, in my opinion at least, the least capable of working this issue. They are the last to know what's going on. Okay? Let's make sure that this is the case. While the answers to this debate have been elusive, at least till now, there have nevertheless been some common threats emerging from the discussions. One, multi-stakeholder cooperation is a prerequisite to tackle existing problems. Two, while we need to discuss internet governance issue globally, we also need to have some actions locally. There are development issues that need to be done by the local societies, the local authorities, the local people. And there is a general understanding that there were no one-size-fits-all solutions. Let's keep in mind that the internet content and how governments act to foster the creation, adoption, development, and dissemination is a hot topic nowadays. There are major challenges to be faced and multiple actions to be taken by the governments and by the internet community. Accessing, connecting, communicating, creating, developing, sending, exchanging, competing, improving standards of living. Where else would you have that? How could you do it? As fast as you could say it, as open as you want it, as uninhibited as it could be, and as more enjoyable than you could ever imagine. It is the universe you once could not imagine, the imagination no one thinker, planner, or a designer ever thought it could be, and the total you could not call a place. It is where you would want to explore it and enjoy it. And you want to do what with it? Regulate it? Come on. I tell you what my daughter says to me as a regulator. I want openness, no strangulation. I want imagination, no limitation. I want to access, no interruption. I want to reach, no redirection. I know to roam, no isolation. I want to grab, no oversight. I want to express, no penalties. And I want to be the way I could think I could be. And you know, you need to let it evolve and do not touch it. Supposedly, the end of my daughter's play. And I tell you, she never stops. Let us admit that there are design inherited concerns associated with openness. As expected, it's normal to say, okay, control. Who controls what? Sovereignty, confidentiality, privacy, safety, security, and definitely politics. But that's the beauty of the internet, isn't it? And you know, content is mainly created by individuals. Access, content, and culture are intertwined and interdependent. Let's take the region for example. I'm just going to go for a couple minutes about the region. You know, we talk about the internet, but we also talk about mobility and mobile penetration. Some countries have reached 200%. I really don't know what it means, 200% penetration. What is 200% penetration? All what I need is just that link for me to be there and just be open. There are proliferations of product tools, Arabization, customization of social networks, site contents, references. We heard some today from Taghridat. Political change in Arab countries lead to growth in social network adoption, and the examples, especially from Egypt, are staggering. The development and localization of documentation centers, initiating some incubators by governments, and the development of Arabic portals, in addition to some digital cities and digital libraries. Yes, however, there are major challenges in our region for digital content in general and for its dissemination. Mainly, we have very limited national and regional initiatives. We don't have that many initiatives that are really ready to produce. Problematic access, and I'm saying problematic access to skilled personnel, they exist, and for training and education. Security concerns that is making people scared of touching the internet in some cases. We need to alleviate some of these things in some places in the region. And quality of local website and local versions. There are also inhibitors and barriers, like the popularity and usage of the English language. Low IT literacy, but you know what's more scary? 1/3 of the region is illiterate completely. It's not only IT literacy that we need to worry about. We need to get literacy of the people. Increasing, but low, still broadband internet user levels, and we need to make sure that we have, as I said, literate users, and we drive real challenge. The trends in the region are very similar to trends in other areas. People are questioning, you know, the efforts of our government, and I belong to one of them, could be described as best as shy and inhibited, if not inhibiting. Some would prefer to describe those efforts as inhibiting, and believe it or not, there is a backlash of the Arab Spring. There is a backlash. Some governments in the Arab world have gone towards more control, more censorship, and more limitations. People are questioning if this behavior by some government is related to their concern about real responsible freedoms, about citizen freedom of expression, access to information, and how to control, what an ugly word, the citizens and what they want. I leave it at that. I got to my 10 minutes, and I'm ready for the questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Hoballah, for this passionate speech. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions regarding some of the things that you have said. I will invite the next speaker, George Salama, who is Senior Manager, Public Policy at SAMENA Telecommunications Council, and he will speak the perspectives from the telecom industry.
Thank you, Dawit. I believe I will be staying there, and I will make sure to be very close to the mic this time. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be part of the first INET meeting in the Gulf region. It's really a pleasure to be among you here discussing issues related to internet governance, especially a few days before the WICET meeting in Dubai. I'll be talking with you today about the internet governance model and the sustainability debate from a telecom operator perspective. For those of you who don't know the SAMENA Council, it is the Council of Telecom Operators in the South Asia, Middle East, North Africa. It is representing the unified voice of its membership. Basically, we are driven by four main mandates, which is to promote the development of digitization policies, promote progress of telecom sector governance and regulation, promote the next generation broadband development, and finally promote cooperation between different stakeholders. So allow me first to go with you through the main building blocks of my presentation today. First, I'll be talking about the model of internet governance, and I will try not to repeat what was mentioned earlier. Then we'll talk about the sustainability issue and what is the current mindset of a telecom operator. Do we really need a paradigm shift, the methodology, and finally the enabler. So, let's first describe what is internet governance. I'm not sure if you are aware about the story of the 6 blind men and the elephant. Does anyone know what is the story behind? I believe after Dr. Ahmad's intervention, we can say that there are only 5 men, not 6 blind men. Simply, 6 blind men were asked to identify what is the object that are standing in front of it. The first one says that it is a tree, it is a fan, it is a wall. No one could really identify what is they are front of. Why? Because they are blind. They have narrow scope. So the big elephant that we are in front of is the internet. 6 blind men are stakeholders. So thanks to the Internet Governance Forum, thanks to the INET meetings that enable all stakeholders to be on the same footing, discussing issues to internet development, so that we'll have a widened scope and we can realize that we are in front of an elephant. We need to realize what is the benefit of the internet, how we can use it to have more development in our societies. Is there really a problem of sustainability when it comes to telecom operator business? I remember Einstein once said that the hardest thing to understand in the world is the income tax. But I believe that if he is between us today, he will say that the hardest thing in the world to understand how telecom operators are investing in upgrading the networks to meet the data tsunami. It is not a problem, it is an issue. We cannot solve the problem by the same way of thinking that we created them. He has also said so. And I found myself standing here in front of the world created. Yes, there is no problem. It is us who are creating problems with our mindset. There is also a solution for each problem. So, now operators are working, telecom operators, fixed and mobile, they are working in a very competitive market. In some countries, very tough regulatory frameworks, licensing fees, revenue sharing. In some countries, revenue sharing reach like 10% of the yearly revenues for telecom operator. So, we need to find a solution for this issue. So in order to find a solution, we need first to analyze what is the mindset of the operator. And when I was thinking of how to describe the mindset of an operator, I remember a nice book I've read. It was about the art of war. one of the best strategies is to win a war is basically saying do not fight the last war. So now operators over the past few decades, they did very good job when it was related to voice business, to SMS, but now it is not anymore the same. VoIP is here, instant messaging application. You cannot imagine how application, for example, that I believe most of us is using now, WhatsApp, it's really harming the SMS model for telecom operators. So now what is the strategy is about? In order to win a war, forget the last war you fought, even if you won it. So basically it's saying that the army that never stopped to defend a particular place or town, it wins by always moving, staying one step ahead. I remember earlier in October in the ITU Telecom World in Dubai, I was present in one of the sessions where we had like CEOs from many telecom operators. We have Mr. Osman Sultan, CEO of Du. He was saying that in the DNA of the telecom operator, it need to be changed. We need to find other solutions. Do not only focus on revenues coming from voice, from SMS. The market dynamics are not anymore the same. Also, I believe, I remember Dr. Amr Rawas, CEO of Mental. He mentioned that in this region, in the Arab region, we have the best talented technical engineers. But what about entrepreneurs? What about innovators? Do we really have those here in this region? We need to have more of them. But how? Thinking out of the box. I will not say think out of the box. No, I will say think as if there is no box at all. You need to find a new solution. Well, analyzing the current mindset, do we need a paradigm shift? Another nice book. I'm sure most of you have read it, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yes, we need a paradigm shift in the telecom operator mindset. Habit 3, put first thing first. Effectiveness require balancing with important relationships and roles. Habit 4, think win-win. You are not alone in the market. You have many stakeholders. You will not achieve success unless you have mutual benefit achieved by everyone. So, what are some proposals for telecom operator to adopt in order to overcome the issue of sustainability? Why don't they tap into the advertisement business? Why do not they think of new commercial schemes? Why don't they create a value-added services out of broadband? Why don't they develop a national and regional joint with other stakeholders? So, how we will do this paradigm shift? The famous Steve Jobs, creativity. Simply. It is just connecting things. By the way, he was saying that when you ask a creative person how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they did not really do it. They just saw it. The solution is there. We need a creative mind to see it, to link those issues together. For example, what about data roaming cost? I believe that most of us, whenever we land on or whenever we roam on a foreign network, most of us first of thing, you don't want to have a huge bill, so you turn off your data roaming to avoid extra cost. But the strategy here, very simply, operator will generate more revenues if you have a large base of subscribers paying less than having a tiny amount of subscribers paying more. So if you lower down the data roaming cost, you will have large base of subscribers which will reflect your revenues in a positive way. Another example and opportunity is digitization. What is digitization? Digitization is the mass adoption of connected digital services by consumers, businesses, governments. We have opportunities. Operators should not act anymore as a pipe to deliver traffic. You have opportunities in government, e-government services, in finance, mobile banking and payment. You have opportunities in education, e-learning services, health, m-health, transportation, even in energy. So there are opportunities. Allow me to come to the end of my presentation with our famous, lovely Vinsurf, who is one of the fathers of the internet. He is currently the Google Internet Chief Evangelist. And I was following his intervention during the latest IGF in Baku. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there, when he was asked to define governance, and again, to achieve this mind shift, this paradigm shift, to overcome any sustainability issue, governance is the key answer. What is governance? It's about how the internet continues to evolve. It's about how people build more of it. It's about what application people are free to try out. We have to keep this environment as open as possible for what we call permissionless innovation. Simply, this is governance. We need more opportunities. We need open platform for discussion between all stakeholders. Adopt these issues. Those are the reason behind the massive development and growth of internet that we are witnessing today. We at the SAMENA Council, we see that with our relation with telecom operators, policymakers, regulators in the region, they are very well open to us. Their door are open to one-to-one meetings. They listen very well. They are providing public consultation, hearing sessions. Let me give you examples from Egypt, from UAE, from ICT Qatar, here in Qatar. So we had a public consultation reply to ICT Qatar on the Qatar National ICT Plan 2015. Same with TRA UAE. UAE National ICT Policy Plan 2016. Same for Egypt. E-Masr Plan for 2020. So the door of regulators and policymakers is open. They are willing to listen. It's our role to go, open the door, deliver the message, create a healthy environment, discussion, debate, and I believe Dr. Ahmed's intervention today again is very clear and obvious. There is no barrier, there is no wall between operators, policymakers, and even civil society and academia in this region. It's a matter of thinking. Think as if there is no box. Thank you so much.
Thank you, George. I think it's very important to hear about the challenges of a major stakeholder in the internet world, which are the telecom companies. We often complain about them, but we have also to hear what are their challenges, like the data tsunami that he mentioned. The next speaker, unfortunately, Karen Mulberry couldn't come, but we have an equally competent speaker who will be replacing her, and this is Paul Rendeck, who is based in Dubai, and he is the Director of External Relations of RIPE NCC. He will talk about internet governance perspectives, and he will talk a little bit about the upcoming World Conference on International Telecommunications as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take yet another approach, and I'm going to stand with this microphone so I can move around a little bit. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to apologize to you for not making the panel session I was supposed to be on this morning, but my plane arrived very late from Dubai. My name is Paul Rendeck, and as Dawit said, I'm the Director of External Relations for the RIPE NCC. I am now based in Dubai, so I'm firmly planted here in the region, and I've spent quite a lot of time running around here. For those of you who don't know who the RIPE NCC is, we are the organization responsible for the distribution of IP address space in Europe, Middle East, Central Asia, and Russia. So we cover a region of 76 countries. You can imagine, extremely culturally diverse, many languages, many different ways of governing, many different policy development approaches. So it does keep us quite busy. We are based in Amsterdam, but for the first time we have branched out, and we do have a representative office in Dubai, which is basically me. So I'm not as pretty as Karen Mulberry, but I will try to tell you a little bit about what's going on with WICET and WITSA, and maybe even some other internet governance issues and maybe the models so that you can see maybe why we're seeing all this movement and activity from different groups and how it is that we're coming together. I'd love to see a show of hands of everyone in here who's heard of WICET before they came here to this meeting. Oh, wow. Like about half of the room. Okay. So, and how many of you actually were involved in anything to do with WICET and WICET up to date? Ooh, smaller show of hands. Okay, good. All right, that helps me a little bit on what I'm going to talk about. And maybe answer some of the questions of why some of you don't know what's going on in WICET and WICET, because there are different models that are going on here. Of course, you've heard the name WICET, you've heard the name WICET, so you probably understand what these mean a little bit. WICET is a standardization assembly. They're meeting actually today. That's the meeting I came from. I was running from Dubai to come to this one. We've been really quite busy as internet industry partners. And when I say industry partners, internet industry partners, I'm talking about the Internet Society, all the regional internet registries, ICANN, IANA, all of these organizations that make up the administration of this internet ecosystem, really. We've been really busy, actually, making sure that we are defending the bottom-up multi-stakeholder approach from our various communities inside of this huge WICET 4-week conference that's going on right now in Dubai. So what's happening is that in the standardization assembly, you have all these different study groups, and all the different countries of the world are wanting to actually place people into these study groups or place people to run these study groups, because there are certain political advantages to have people in different study groups based on what your country or your region's approach is to telecommunications and policy making. And we can see this. You know, the funny thing is that all of this that we're doing now has kind of jumped out of WISs. How many of you have heard of WISs? Okay, good. Almost all of the room there. That's great. We've learned a lot since the WISs days. It's really nice that we're actually even able to be a part of WICET and WICET, because I think when all of this was being discussed the last time they had this meeting, or the last time they were updating this thing they called the ITR, the Internet Telecommunications Regulations, it was in 1988. There was no way that any of this was happening in the room. No kind of multi-stakeholder approach to where we're getting ourselves now. So I can stand up here and say there's this big beast called WICET and WICET, and ooh, aren't they bad? You know, like, no. I think actually we've had quite a lot of input in there. Some of us, maybe not all of us, and I'll make these distinctions between this and other groups like the IGF. I will not go into too much detail because I know Qusai will talk a little bit about that. But so now we're all sitting in Dubai and they're talking about all these different issues. We have actually been invited. We are in these meetings, and in most of these meetings, the chairmen are actually calling on the various stakeholder groups to give their interventions to the microphone. That's great. We are being heard there, right? We also have had the opportunity to see what all the different delegations are saying or what they're thinking, so that during the coffee breaks we can pounce on them and we can try to lobby them into either a different way of thinking, which may be good for our stakeholder group. I'm sure there are other stakeholder groups that are doing the same thing. So this is actually what we're seeing happening in Dubai at the moment. There are some 1,500 people registered that are there attending this event. I'm sure there will be more that will come in time. So in WICET, they actually aren't making any policy decisions, because they're actually discussing what are the different kind of aspects that Imad was talking about, all these things like, you know, safety and spam and what have you, and they're discussing where this work is going to be done and how the approach is going to be made. So everybody there wants to actually give their opinion on what should happen there and how this should be run. So it is nice that they have given this multi-stakeholder approach to this. Again, multi-stakeholder approach. If you are a member, a sector member of the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, sector member D or sector member T, you are able to actually attend some of these meetings. The RIPE NCC, I'm happy to say, is a sector member of both so that we could participate. But we, of course, bring the whole ideas of our community along with us when we go to this process. This process, they've been preparing for these meetings for over a year, these member states. They've been discussing these topics, bringing together, forming their resolutions. In many cases, they've been doing this in a multi-stakeholder approach in the various regions. There are two in specific that I'd like to mention. I was involved with a lot of the consultations of the Arab group. I also went to one of the roundtable meetings that Samina threw in Dubai on WICIT, preparing for WITSA and WICIT. I was also a participant of the CEPT, which is the Conference on European Post and Telecommunications that was forming the European position. I went to all of their meetings. I had a place there. So, you know, to say that this wouldn't have been multi-stakeholder would not really be fair, because everybody's interpretation of a multi-stakeholder approach is a little bit different in the regions. I could see that the way the Arabs approached it was different from the way that the Europeans approached it. But the fact that they actually had multi-stakeholder consultations that took place in this region is already a good development, because I think that's something that's just starting to take root in this region. And the fact that they did have multi-stakeholder consultations in many of the countries to form the Arab group's positions going into WITSA and WICIT is quite a positive thing. So, I mean, naturally, as you can well imagine, we are looking at pushing this multi-stakeholder approach when we talk about WITSA and WICIT. Now I'd like to turn over to what's happening in WICIT, because WITSA, you see, this is something that can generate quite a lot of this coming from all the different stakeholder groups to actually go in and look at the work that's being done in the various study groups of the ITU. WICIT is a whole nother ballgame. WICIT's a very large political fish. Member of the ITU, you are able to actually join some of the meetings, not all of them, because in many cases the governments will ask you to leave the room and they will then intervene and make the decisions based on policy going forward. That's a very different kind of approach to making policies, one that's very strange for the technical community from which I'm representing. If you look at this, we have been actually in a multi-stakeholder kind of policy development phase for the last 20 years inside of RIPE. So inside this region that I'm talking about, we have been forming policies for 20 years in an open and inclusive and bottom-up manner. We're very used to this. So you can imagine now that when we've hit something like WICIT, where these things are very much discussed by member states, governments, closed door, not multi-stakeholder, we're banging heads. We're coming from completely different sides. But again, like I said, there was a lot of multi-stakeholder kind of dialogue going on to get us to the approaches of what the different regions or countries are actually putting in to the meeting that's happening now in Dubai. So that's very interesting there. I think that one of the big things that I've taken, because of course we're in now the second week of this 4-week conference, is that we need to be very careful about the words that are being put into the different documents that are being created. This is really something special, and it takes quite an eye to see this. I think if you look up and you see them drafting these documents, and they'll be fighting about a particular word, and it'll be taking an hour or so, and one country will agree, another country will disagree, and you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, that word looks okay. But you don't understand the consequences of the interpretation of what that word could mean. And this is the very delicate thing. I think this is the thing that is taking the 4 weeks, because, of course, when I come back to our constituency, the 9,000 members of the RIPE NCC and the RIPE community, and tell them, oh, we're off to Dubai for a 4-week conference, they're asking me if I've lost my mind, you know? But when you look at how long it takes to reach consensus on a document that isn't very large at all, with a concentration on the particular words that are there, it's frightening. And we can see that, you know, when actually we've learned this firsthand. We've worked with some of the governments to see what are the wordings, and they've actually told us, well, if this word was replaced here or this sentence was slightly shifted here, it would mean this for you. Wow. You know, on some of these different topics, of course, there are too many to mention here. This is a concern, because we don't have the same ideas of definitions. Governments, the technical community, civil society. We look at words and definitions differently. So when we come together in this playing field, you can already imagine that when I look at something that says internet governance, I know what I mean by internet governance. But if I'm standing beside a country delegation, if I look at what they think internet governance means, we're totally on opposite sides of the planet. So this is one of the things that's very difficult, and I think that we've talked about this in so many different forums about the fact that if we could all actually look at some of the definitions and have a good understanding or share our understanding of what the definitions of particular words could be, I think our dialogue would be much more progressive. If I could look at the multi-stakeholder process, I mean, I've said the word so many times up here. I'm so happy to see that this is actually starting to take root here in the Arab region. There is something that happened this year for the first time that my colleague Qusai will talk about, the Arab Internet Governance Forum. There is an global Internet Governance Forum. I'm so happy to have been a part of the multi-stakeholder advisory group of both the global IGF and the Arab IGF. It was a great experience, and I could see that what was happening here in the region was something very new and wow, you know, it brought together a whole bunch of people, about 300 people came to that. And I think that the discussions that they had there were very much in keeping with what people want to see moving into something like WITSA and WICET. So if I'm looking at this Internet Governance Forum and this whole multi-stakeholder approach to the dialogue that was going on there, and then on the other side of the scale, I'm looking at this WITSA and WICET thing, a lot of the discussions in there are very much the same, and the conclusions that you reach are probably the same. You're just going about it in a different way. And this is quite an interesting thing that I've been able to see. So I think in the end, if I look at regulation, the word regulation, because this is really all what we're talking about here when we talk about internet governance from the perspective of WICET, WITSA, and the ITU. If you look at the word regulation, is it a bad word? No, I don't think so. But I think that it's really important to know how you get to the result of the regulation. And I think this is all really one of the things that we as industry partners here are really pushing in the multi-stakeholder kind of bottom-up approach to actually making policy decisions. We know regulation is needed. It's just how do you get there? And I think a lot of the governments look at us and say, okay, well, you know, here we are. We need to make public policy. This is our jobs. And, you know, we keep telling them, hey, look, I can tell you right now, the internet technical community, we are not interested in making public policy. We're too busy running the internet. But what we think we can do is we can help governments make better public policy with some consultation. And hopefully with some of the deliberations that we've had, we will be able to see some positive outcomes coming out from this kind of multi-stakeholder approach in WITSA and WICET. So with that, actually, I think I just want to touch on two other points from the region, and I will let you go, because I made this on the fly here, this bit here. I think that we need to keep moving forward in this region with the multi-stakeholder approach. I think one of the most important things that need to be brought into this is youth. It was really funny. I think in the IGF process and in the Arab IGF process, there was a good concentration on youth and what they thought about how the internet is governed. In WITSA and WICET, there's no youth involvement at all. I don't think they even considered that group. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And capacity building efforts. I think that when some of these member states are making decisions on what's happening, I think it's important to focus on capacity building in this region and not just about the dialogue of doing studies that don't actually take us anywhere. So, and I think that's finding the balance in moving forward. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul, for reminding us the process that brought us. Thank you, Paul, for reminding us about the process that brought us to the WICET and WTSA. And I hope that the audience here will follow what's happening in the coming weeks more because of your speech today. The next person and the last speaker is going to be someone I have known for a very long time, for having contributed for the development of internet in the region, in the Arabic content, as well as for the internet governance in the region. And as Paul said, he has been behind a very important forum that happened a month ago, I believe, in Kuwait, the Arab IGF, which is the first regional IGF, and I believe it was a very successful one. I'm happy to hear what happened there and what he thinks will happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في البداية بس أحب أعبر عن سعادتي بوجودي بين الأشقاء في دولة قطر، واعتزازي وتقديري بآيسو قطر على أخذهم المبادرة بتنظيم اجتماع INET الأول في المنطقة تحت INET قطر، وأتمنى لهم التوفيق والنجاح، والشقيقة قطر المزيد من الازدهار والتقدم. فاسمحوا لي أن أتحول إلى الإنجليزية في حديثي. I'm happy to see that the heading of the my presentation in the program was the birth of the, it's called the birth of the multi-stakeholder model in the region, and I'm so happy to hear about that and to see it on the program. Just to give a background on the nature of the IGF, just in case for someone who doesn't have the right idea. The IGF, or the Internet Governance Forum, is multi-stakeholder in nature. It's an independent policy dialogue platform on internet governance which requires multi-stakeholder involvement. The stakeholders are always defined as government, private sector, civil society, and regional organizations. It is an outcome of the WSIS, which is a multi-stakeholder summit, and the multi-stakeholder advisory group, which is well known as the MAG, are the body that is responsible to set the program of each IGF annually. And basically the IGF consists of plenaries and workshops, which is required to be multi-stakeholder in structure, participation, and interaction. So in a nutshell, this is the IGF, or the nature of the event itself. Moving from there to the first Arab IGF, the slogan was a better internet for a better Arab world. That was the slogan of the first meeting. It was convened in Kuwait from the 9th to 11th of October 2012, and it was hosted by Kuwait Information Technology Society, where I'm the deputy chairman, and it's a civil society based in Kuwait. It was under the umbrella of the Arab League and the UN ESCWA. The Secretariat is the TRA of Egypt, and the website of the Secretariat is igfarab.org. The sponsors were the private sector, the technical community, and youth. We're talking about Zain, Telecom, QualityNet, RIPE NCC, ICANN, WebMaster, and we call Tawasul Telecom, and of course WebMaster, which is the youth organization, which did for us the host website. So this is why we say we were also sponsored by the youth for our host website, just to emphasize on their role and the importance of their role, actually. This is a longer slide. Oh, sorry. I forgot about that. Now, just from this slide, you would notice that this is a multi-stakeholder slide. You have inter-regional organization, you have a civil society, you have the Secretariat, which is a government, and the sponsors, which is a private sector and the technical community, and plus the youth. So the slide demonstrates the fact that this is a multi-stakeholder event. Moving to this, just to give you a background on the objectives of the Arab IGF, not taking that long time, it is focusing on public policies related to internet governance, facilitate the exchange of information, best practices, knowledge, and lesson learned, gather different opinions and build consensus for harmonized Arab views and priorities, and on mechanism to respond to Arab countries' needs related to internet governance issues, discuss emerging issues and develop recommendations, build and develop capacity in internet governance, as well as improve the participation of all stakeholders, communicate the Arab position globally and enhance the Arab law in formulating global internet governance policies, and the last, engaged in outreach with Internet Governance Forum and other regional forums. The process. Since it is the birth of a multi-stakeholder model, we started actually in a small expert group meeting that was in Beirut, held in October 2010 in the ASCOA building. And there was multi-stakeholder representation there who called for the initiation of a forum. We moved from there to the Arab League, asking them to take their endorsement for that. They requested us at that point to make an open consultation. So an open consultation was held in Beirut last January, actually, and about 65 participants representing all multi-stakeholder groups, including governments. They all has the consent that this is an important event, and they want to take it from there. The recommendation of the public consultation was forwarded to the Executive Bureau of the Arab Information and Communication Council of Ministers. They endorsed it too. From there, it moved to the Permanent Arab Committee for Communication and Information under the Arab Minister Council, which is part of the Arab League, and that meeting took place in Dubai between the 24th to 25th of May to launch the Arab IGF. And finally, in June, we had the endorsement of the Council of Ministers, the Communication Information Council of Ministers in the Arab League, to say we are endorsing this event under the umbrella of the Arab League and the ASCOA. It was followed by the formation of the multi-stakeholder advisory group for the Arab IGF, which has its first meeting actually. Sorry, can we have the slide? Sorry. Yes. When we have the endorsement, we thought that the stakeholders, we should take a different approach with the stakeholders. We believe that it's not only the government and the private sector and civil society and regional organization. We thought that the technical community and the academic community is also a stakeholder that need to be added. Once the Arab MAG has been formalized, we had two meetings, one in June and 18th, and one on September 9th, and both of them were in Cairo. And we made an open consultation in Cairo, which, sorry, there is a typo here. It was on the 4th of September, not the 5th. And we also launched a fellowship program in September 2012 to encourage the participation in the Arab IGF. Moving from there, convening the event itself, we have 280 registrants from 18 Arab countries and other regions. The themes that we have discussed is access, openness, security, and the privacy, content, and critical internet resources, and youth. We have conducted 6 plenaries and 13 workshops over 3 days, including setting the scene and the way forward. The birth of the Arab stakeholder model is actually, I would characterize it with the memo that has been forwarded by the Arab League to the respective governments, where it mentioned that in reference to the invitation by Kuwait Information Technology Society, we are inviting you for the first Arab League, for the first Arab IGF, which is taking place under the umbrella of the Arab League and the ASCOA, and in coordination with the Secretariat, the TRA of Egypt. So this is one of the rare correspondence that you'll find for the Arab League mentioning a civil society, government, and interregional organizations. And what a good example, which just happened by a mere coincidence, that 4 of the Arab MAG members are on the panel. Paul from the technical community, George Salama from the private sector, Dr. Imad Hoballah from the government, and me from the civil society. So it is the birth of the Arab, of the multi-stakeholder model in the Arab region. Thank you.
Thank you, Qusai. That was really interesting, and I'm sure that we'll see more regional IGFs in the future. As we did in the morning, we are going to have a few questions from students of Carnegie Mellon, and Professor Daniel Phelps will help me in inviting the students to ask questions. Yes, you can do it from there.
Okay. So, well, Mahmoud and Omar, if you make your way on down to one of the mics. I can't see if you're the lights. First of all, I want to take a moment to thank, obviously, every member of the panel to be here today. It makes a big difference, I think, for students to have an opportunity to get so involved with the decision makers, the thought leaders in this area. Obviously, it's very important, I think, to all of them. And while they're coming on down, so you know, you mentioned policy to undergraduate students, and you know, they don't jump up and say, yes, oh, that's exactly what I want to be part of. But I have to say, but I have to say, we're very fortunate that when I sent out a call to the students and asking who would want to be interested or who would be interested in coming to this panel session to go ahead and ask questions, when they realized it was about internet governance, and they obviously have a intrinsic knowledge of how important the internet is to themselves presently, and certainly how important it's going to be for them in the future, students were quick to go and volunteer. So I actually met with them in my office beforehand, and we sat down and we talked about why governance, why policy with respect to the internet is important to them, and helping them kind of think about, so they could contextualize the questions that they wanted to ask. Because certainly the decisions that are made now are the decisions that are going to impact them for the next 15, 20 years or longer, certainly a large part of their work life. And for those that have grown up in the internet age, the differentiation between self-on and offline tends to go ahead and blur. So this is obviously something which is of great interest to them. So that being said, I see Omar is there first. If both of you would go ahead and just introduce yourself really quickly before you ask your question, and then feel free to go ahead and ask to the panel. Thanks.
So hi, my name is Omar Shamiya. I am an information systems student in Carnegie Mellon, Qatar. My question to Mr. Paul and the panel, where do you think youth fit into the policy equation, and what roles can they play, since you specifically mentioned youth should be taken into consideration?
So I'll repeat it for you since I have him pre-done. So it's where do you think youth fit into the policy equation, and what role can they play?
Sure, the other panelists can answer this, but I'll give you something that I saw firsthand happen. I actually attended Eurodig, which is the equivalent of the Arab IGF that happens in Europe. And they had a pretty heavy youth program like the Arab IGF did. And I was so amazed to see the youth come in there and talk about the issues that they thought were important to them on internet governance. Actually, we all stand around as adults saying, "Oh, we must protect our children. Oh, we must protect our children on the internet." But I think, and then we go out there and we make all these policies that are supposed to be protecting the children. I think the one thing that we didn't do was to turn around and ask the children what they think about being on the internet. What are the dangers of being on the internet? How do they perceive this? When they had the panels, and in both cases, in the Arab IGF and in Eurodig, the youth that came up there said, "Oh, please, security on the internet, we know all about that. We know that much better than you do." I was shocked. These were, kids ranging from, the age of about 13 to 20, and they were talking about real issues that they talk about amongst themselves on security on the internet, what to do, what not to do. I think they could be great instructors to their parents, and probably telling their parents, if they were open, if there was this open dialogue that took place, to say, hey, we know the dangers, these are the things that we see as dangerous. And I think we can learn a lot from that. So I think they have a great place in there, which is the reason why in the talk that I just gave, I think it's so important to engage the youth. And I think having seen it happen firsthand, it's I think something that we is in the internet administration, like organizations like ICANN and the Internet Society, of course, is a great leader here, and the regional internet registries. We actually take this quite seriously, and we are looking at youth programs, bringing in the youth so that we understand, or we're making sure that they understand how all of this fits in this internet ecosystem so that they can actually be the future, really.
Right. Another question I have is more general. That's more clear. So, how do you think that another question could be, why don't government regulators require companies using the internet to be explicit about their policies related to customer privacy and information? That's something also could be related to youth and social networks.
Did you want to address a particular person, or just open it to the panel? Open. Okay. So. Sorry, make sure it's on. Can you hear me? So why don't government regulators require companies using the internet to be explicit about their policies related to customer privacy and information? So, and we just want to, anyone can feel free to pop in right here. This is obviously touches on the notion of security and governance and privacy and different perspectives on what's important and what's not with respect to how data is handled. And we know, obviously, different areas of the world handle this kind of information differently.
Why don't they? I don't know. I mean, we need to make sure that the environment that people are in are as conducive to productivity, creativity, and a part of doing that is to make sure that it is between parentheses clear as to what the limitations are, if there are any limitations. We believe that any provider of any service should be making it clear as to what his or her approach is to data protection and user protection. Anybody who doesn't do that is not doing their proper job. In the past, I believe regulators started to see what is called consumer protection. I believe now, if there are regulations, it should be more for development and advancement. Thanks.
Anyone else, or we're good? Okay. So thank you so much, Omar. I think we have Mahmoud up now. Mahmoud Al-Ismail, if you want to go and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mahmoud Al-Ismail. I'm a computer science major. And I want to address a question to Mr. George Salama, since he talked about the limitless environment for using internet to encourage innovation. So my question is, do governments have the absolute right to place limitations over the use of the internet? Since doesn't internet advocates for the free use and internet for everybody?
I'll go and repeat it as well. So do governments have the absolute right to place limitations over the use of their citizens' internet, particularly since internet advocates for the free use for everyone?
Yeah, this is a very tough question, actually, and
no.
Yes. Yeah, you saved my life. Thank you. No, but let me put it that way, because at the end of the day, the ideal role of, let me say, a regulator is to ensure the customer and the consumer protection, whatever services he is using, whether mobile services or internet or etc. So you cannot say clearly no, and you cannot say clearly yes. It depends on what and how you will control and regulate. So if regulations and policy frameworks are created in a way that will enable the end user to be protected from, let's say, business misusage, this will be like productive policy frameworks. Let me give you an example for this, is what is called internet fair usage policy. Nowadays, you are using your mobile data packages, for example, and if you reach a certain limit of data usage, you will be charged extra fees for this extra usage. So why this is happening? This is not to harm you as an end user. No, in the contrary, this will help you as an end user to have the best quality of service, and also it will protect other customers on the same network. So it's somehow the answer is yes and no, but at the end of the day, the policy framework is the one who decide the right answer. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to go with the second question?
Hello. Yes. I have another question to the panel. Is that to what extent do worldwide businesses with their innovation and services affect Arabic government policies and regulations over the use of internet?
And I'll repeat it again. So to what extent do worldwide businesses with their innovations and services affect the Arab government's policies and regulations over the internet? I think that's open to the panel as a whole.
Not in any mean today. There is a gap. And it's a challenge for the Arab region to create an encouraging environment for innovation, to have an environment that supports it, encourage it. If we find today to what extent the innovation in the Arab world was reflected in the mobile applications, for example, this has all happened without any governmental intervention. It all happened by the mindset of the users themselves. But as creating an environment to foster innovation today and having an impact on government policy, it's not that much today. It's a challenge that we need to address. I think in last March, when we have the Connect the Arab World Summit in Qatar, that was a major issue that was discussed as policies and how to create an encouraging environment that can foster innovation in the Arab world and link it to the social and economical aspects and development. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll take a stab at this one as well, but maybe from another angle. Worldwide businesses. I'll take that from the angle of all the things that kind of go on in the internet that would be very interesting for youth in this region. You will find a way to get what you want. It's what you're doing, right? I can see that. We know. We can see that the movements. We can see that the youth here are engaging. They know what's happening. I think it's fantastic. One of the suggestions I had made from sitting in all this internet governance work is that I said I would love to see the youth of Eurodig and the Arab IGF youth come together on a panel and share their experiences inside of their different countries or different regions on what they're seeing. I think you would find that their concerns and the things that they're interested in and the things that they do are very much the same. You're talking with each other already. It's fantastic. And now I'll do the flip side of that coin. I spend a lot of time, actually, the last year and a bit, I've spent a lot of time running around this region, talking to the various ministries and the TRAs. Whatever door I could open up, I was jumping into it from that side of things. And each time I had the discussions with them, I could see the concerns that were sitting there with them. They are very concerned about this because on the one side, sure, there are a lot of cultural aspects we have to take into account for this region. They're very real. I think they need to be discussed and people need to talk about them. I think that the youth needs to be able to talk about this with those decision makers and see where they're going forward because this culture is moving like every culture is moving, right? And the great thing is that each time I see those different TRAs, these telecommunication regulatory authorities or bodies that make policies over how things are run or monitored or access to or not access to or whatever, at the end of the day, what are the things I always tell them, and they hate it. They always look at me like, oh gosh, here's Paul again with these comments. I keep telling them, you have to be very careful, and I understand the balance you have to play, because you have to understand that what you're doing will directly impact the competitiveness of your children in this global society that's going on. And don't think they're not already playing in it. So to put your head in the sand and make these policies is really not going to work. Something has to happen here. And they hate it when I open up that sentence with them, but I do that very regularly. So that's very great. And I hope that in some way, through the Internet Society or through some other kind of channels here in the region, especially the Arab IGF, I mean, bang on Qusai's door over there, or on all of our doors here that are on the MAG, and make sure that there's the proper youth representation in things like this, answering questions like this to the real policymakers. I love the question.
I agree with what Paul said. I have a bit of a different, how should I call this, a problem with this. Those worldwide applications have caused, to some extent, or have, I shouldn't say have caused, have made it easy for the so-called Arab Spring. Okay? Now, the causes existed, and they do exist, and they will exist for a while, but it facilitated the movement, it facilitated communication, etc. A lot of people see the internet in general, or government at least. They see the internet in general, and those types of applications, and the free roaming of those applications, as not only a basic technological change, or a minor social change. They do not see it as a simple multi-stakeholder gathering that is gathered somewhere to discuss things. They really see it as a major social transformation. They see it as a cultural transformation. And above all, they see it as a political system transformation. Let's not joke about it. This is how it is viewed by many of these governments. And that's why you will continue to have problems with policies that are being made more recently to choke the internet, to choke the entrepreneurship, to choke the creativity. So it is affecting it. It is some kind of a backlash that we all need to be careful, not by backing off, but at least see how to approach it in such a way that we continue the push forward without pushing those players to really go on their own. One of my fears about the wicket, one of my fears or concerns, is that that group that's gathering there, I don't think they will go to having an international treaty. This is not going to happen. But if they go away separately, where Russia and China and some of the Arab countries go on their own, you would see major issues in each one of those countries that are targeting the youth, targeting the businesses, new businesses, the entrepreneurs, and targeting the freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Thank you. I would like to thank the students for asking such interesting questions and really congratulations, because policy is not, I think, a very easy thing for students, and you raised really very valid questions. I think we are almost, it's almost 4, but we can afford to be late for a few more minutes and have some questions from the audience at large. So I would like to invite the audience to ask questions.
Hi. It's more of a comment than a question. I really love the questions the students have raised, and I felt that I want to contribute something. One of the questions you asked was, do the governments have the right to control? And I think the way the panel answered it was as political as they had to be, because they're the official panel. But being off the panel, I want to answer it in a very blunt manner. I don't think it's about right. I think A government has a responsibility to control some things, and it's not a right, it's a responsibility. Because, you know, being on the internet puts you and everybody around open to certain risks. And I think it's the government's role to take care of mitigating those risks for you. But I don't think the government should get involved in what you do with the internet, because once they do, they're killing your innovation and killing their future. If a government cannot deliver to its people, you end up with a lot of problems in a country. That's not good for anybody. So I think, you know, one good lesson for governments to take from this is that they have a responsibility, not a right. And you know, when we mentioned wicked and the definitions, this is a very important distinction in definitions. It's a responsibility, not a right. It carries a lot of weight, and it's very important that they get it right. And then another thing you mentioned was, what was your other question again? Well, you know, it's very funny, and I think worldwide businesses, and you know, Qusai mentioned the gap, and I wanted to comment on this gap. There is a big gap, and there's this young person, and I say young, I'm not much older, but I feel like I'm 100 years old. So this girl, she's 25 years old. She wants to start a collaborative online publication. Great idea. It's been done before, but she has her own spin on it. I can't tell you what her spin is because it's, you know, her competitive advantage. And she comes and says, I want to register the business in Bahrain because I want to employ Bahrainis. And I'm Bahraini, I want to employ Bahrainis. But the first thing I asked her is, do you have a publication license in Bahrain? And she goes, but this is online. And she's right, this is online. It should not need a publication license, but it does. If you register the business in Bahrain, you have to have a publication license, even though it's a collaborative online thing. If she registered a BVI or a Seychelles vehicle or a Delaware company, she doesn't need that license. And it's just considered outside. And the same government will be okay with her running the magazine without a license if she's incorporated somewhere else. But if she's incorporated in their own country, they're going to focus on her and say, listen, you're doing something illegal. And I think the gap between the rules of ministries of commerce around the region and the world we live in, this digital world, it does not wait for people to catch up to it. And unless you're running in front of it, it's going to drive right over you and leave you behind, is massive. And I think those rules and regulations are so outdated, they need to be changed to give those young people the opportunity to come and deliver something, to come and capitalize on their ideas and on their creativity to help us grow as a region, as a country, as nations, as a world. Because let's be honest, Europe is not better off, the States not better off. Economic crisis is hitting everybody. And it's going to be them.
Thank you very much. Since we are a bit late, I would prefer that your comments are as short as possible. Thank you.
Hi. I have a follow-up question on what Muhammad asked to Mr. George Salama. I think you kind of touch based upon an example, maybe on a wrong note, I mean, according to me. You touch base upon fair usage of internet policy. At the end of the day, when there's a more data used from a user, you are penalizing him. At one point in time, you are endorsing multi-stakeholder approach. And at the other, you are penalizing the user who might not have a real influence to that access data user. And at the same time, you are washing your hand off as a service provider, saying that it might affect the other user. You are better off than the user, at least, that you can reach to him, asking him that, okay, there's a problem identified with your particular IP address or particular connection, and this is what the follow-up action will take. So, I mean, there's a kind of disconnect here, which I feel, and yeah, so, I mean, the solution, in my view, should be that the user, as a civil society member, should also be involved into development of that fair usage policy. I mean, there should be some representation. So, I mean, I would like to your view on that.
So,
thank you.
It's really a valid comment to what you have mentioned, but
again, we are not talking about two separate things. We are talking about the same issue, but maybe from different angles. The issue is that I was giving the example of the internet fair usage policy as one type of policy and regulatory mechanisms that can be used by a regulator in order to make sure that the market is well regulated for both for the benefit of end customer and for the benefit of operator as well. But this does not mean that multi-stakeholder model will not be engaged. I remember like in 2009, I used to be working for the Egyptian regulator, and this was the first time where when we issued the fair usage policy, and I remember it was like as if you throw a bomb in the middle of a full room empty of people. Everyone was screaming on the internet, on the Facebook, why you want to charge us more? It's enough, we are paying our bill every month. Why you are working for the for the benefit of the business sector, not for the benefit of the end user? So what was the solution then? By the regulator, a hearing session. Hearing session. In the regulator, we invited all stakeholders, civil society, academia, end users, internet service providers, mobile operators, all in the same room, same setup. We listened to all of them. We addressed the concern of all people, and then we came up with a solution. So we are talking about the same issue. Multi-stakeholder is a model that will help to solve any problem, not only fair usage problem, any internet-related issue. Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Stéphane Bazan from St. Joseph University in Lebanon. So can I just make a joke before I can ask my question? We started this morning with how state policy could protect us from the internet, and we ended up the day with how could internet policy protect us from the governments, which I found pretty funny. Anyway, so here's my question. Okay, it was a joke. Some countries have recently embraced the Open Data Initiative, which consists in the release and publication on the internet by government agencies, basically of large parts of public data. The availability of these huge amounts of data is a great opportunity for companies and innovation, but also for citizens in need of more governance transparency. So how could we promote the release of more public data on the internet by Arab governments, and is it a good idea?
I think there are many useful information that the public can benefit from, or the economic sectors, or can contribute to the social economical development once it is structured properly. And there are archives of information in the government that once if it's just released, the benefit will be immediate. It's just that you need someone to organize it and present it in a way that is beneficial to all. And we saw examples of that. We saw examples of mobile applications that is done by independent users who benefited from electronic information that is publicly available, and how they transformed that in a program, and now they are making an income and they are benefiting of it. The problem is that government information is not structured, not necessarily structured, and it is not also structured in terms of the right to view or let's say access. Many governments in the Arab world may not necessarily have a classification of information that this is public, this is limited, this is confidential, and whatever. But and a good example of that, for example, we lack statistics. If I'm a business that and I am interested in a specific economical area in a specific Arab country. I may not have the most updated statistics from national sources that can contribute to, let's say, my feasibility study to do an investment in that specific sector. And if I need some statistics on that, I may go to international resources or foreign resources, and that's dangerous in somehow, especially that it is not updated. But with the limit, although the information is limited that is available to the public, or if it's available, it is not properly updated. We did see successful examples of people taking the benefit from that information, structuring it, presenting it in a proper way. A simple example, the people who's getting data on the traffic, and daily they are telling us this is a busy street, shift to the other. The flight arrivals and flight departures information. Many location-based services which are successful, and they are living examples. So there is definitely a potential. There is an opendata.org which has a membership of about 75 countries. So far the membership of the Arab countries in it is 2 or 3 to my knowledge. But definitely open data has potential in the Arab world.
Thank you very much. I think we'll stop here. Okay, please.
There's no doubt that digital transparency is increasing expectations of transparency, or digital technology. It's increasing expectation of transparency and accountability from governments, bodies, and officials, and improved public services, including e-government services. E-government must be more than an entry point to become more of a citizen's place to be, to express, to question the governments, the officials, and to produce and force, and I'm using the word carefully, force the governments to produce the necessary data, to produce the necessary reports. And that could not happen by the government saying, oh, I'm going to do it. That will happen with civil society, with each one of us acting in his or her own capacity within any group that they're part of to demand these type of reports, to publish these type of reports whenever they make it available, and to push for it. It's not going to happen by itself. Our governments are not going to do it. They do it most of the time to just say that we have engaged the people, we are showing some data. It's just a picture.
Thank you. Okay. I think we should stop here. Thank you very much for this very interesting session. I think we have explored this very complicated issue, and I would like to thank also the participants who have been quite active, the students who have been very, I think, inquisitive in their approach, and I think it has contributed to making this conference very interesting and different from what you used to have. Now I would like to invite Sophie Maddens, who is a Senior Director, Global Services of Internet Society, Internet Society, for the closing, followed by Fadel Enazi, Chairman of Internet Society Qatar chapter. Thank you.